Hello, I'm Mike Day, Dealer Service Representative here at AGWS. Welcome to our December AGWSU F&I Insights webinar. Today, Bob Harkins, our Vice President of Training, will be covering politics and F&I legal ramifications, FTC's auto buyer study, FTC's Buckle Up report, and then the latest VPP regulatory attacks. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the panel on the right, and we'll try to address them as they come in. For follow-up questions, you could email bharkins, BHARKINS, at agws.com. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thank you very much. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to F&I Insights, December 2020, our final webinar of the year, but yet it's the 16th. In our series. Next slide, Mike. As Mike said, today's topic, politics and F&I legal ramifications, the FTC's auto buyer study that was just released about 60 days ago, the FTC's Buckle Up report, the same release, and also the latest ongoings with what's happening with respect to the regulatory attacks. Next slide, Mike. Here we have our AGWSU webinar series, and just a thought about that. You see the dates and topics for this year, 2020, and also the 4 webinars quarterly that we did for 2019. So, after this webinar is concluded, you'll now have 16 webinars on your system. And what we've been asked already to do for next year, 2021, is to continue our webinars on a monthly basis, which we will do. It'll be the second Wednesday of every month at 1 p.m. Central. Our goal in this webinar series is really to provide you with an on-demand 24/7, 365 F&I and compliance training program for your agencies and also for your dealer clients as well. Bottom line is everything that we do is designed to help you maximize deal profit, meaning both front-end gross and finance and insurance income, but as always, to do it the right way. I will tell you, is looking through this for the year and really for 2019 as well, the top 5 webinars that we've had really the most response to and demand, or request really is a better word, for help with in stores and providing you with the slides, which all you have to do is you go to agwsu.com, agwsu.com/webinars, play any of these webinars that you want. If you want the material, contact me. I'll have marketing send you the slides, and either yourself without me, or if you want to do it together, we can provide training to your agency team or any of your dealer clients as well. But the top 5 that we've had requests for information on really go back to number 1 is our February 2020 webinar, Successful Menu Selling. And our talking points there was successful menu selling begins with menu telling, menu introductions and presenting options, and then monologue, dialogue, and conversational selling. So that was number 1. Number 2, as far as requests for information on and requests for slides, was the April 8th, 2020 webinar, F&I Insights, and that topic with Dave Robertson from AFIP was preloading products or services. Is it legal or illegal? Secondly, how to develop a dealership value statement. And number 3, AGWSU/AFIP, Association of Finance and Insurance Professionals, compliance checklist and dealer aid solutions. Number 3, from a request standpoint, was the May 2020 webinar. And with COVID and doing things offsite, whatever, you can see why this was and still is true. The FTC cooling off rule, vehicle sales made at home or at certain other locations, internet sales, compliance with privacy, exception and adverse action notices, and then the last 2 topics, the do's and don'ts of electronic signatures, and finally the 2020 Military Lending Act rule change. Number 4, as far as request, our July webinar, value added finance and insurance sales presentations, value added objection handling, and goals. This was the Zig Ziglar information, the 7-step process on goals, how to accomplish. And then number 5, last but not least, from a request standpoint, was our August 2020 webinar, F&I Insights, and the topics, compliance and ethics, and the protection of the dealer and the dealership. And we got heavily involved with the NADA, Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, as well as the NADA Model Dealership Policy for voluntary protection products. So to date, that's been the big five as far as requests for help or information. But all you have to do, go to agwsu.com/webinars and look them up, play any that you want, contact me, and we'll really kind of go from there. So again, 24/7, 365 on demand for you, F&I and the compliance and ethics webinars. Next slide, Mike. All right, politics and F&I legal ramifications. Not that that hasn't been in the news the past few months, and will be, I think, for a number of months yet to come. I want to tie that into compliance and ethics and the protection of the dealer and the dealership. And to do that, for this month's webinar, I want to provide you with information from three very credible sources. Source number one, again, will be from AFIP, the Association of Finance and Insurance Professionals, and information shared to us or given to us by AFIP's Executive Director and President, Dave Robertson. Source number two will be from the Federal Trade Commission, as we talk about the study just completed, the auto buyer study, and also the Buckle Up report. Would remind you, if you are a new car dealership, RV dealership and new vehicles, whatever, you are in almost every case directly under the umbrella of the Federal Trade Commission and not directly under the umbrella of the Cfpb. The finance sources that buy our paper and are directly under the umbrella of the Cfpb and also the Department of Justice. But as a new car dealership, because you have a service facility and you're not keeping or handling your own paper, you're assigning the contracts to a third party, you are not directly under the umbrella of the Cfpb, but you're directly under the umbrella of the Federal Trade Commission. So I want to provide you with information from source number one is AFIP, number two, the Federal Trade Commission. Number three is the law firm of Hudson Cook. And you know, we talked many times about Hudson Cook's car law, the F&I Legal Desk book, currently in its 8th edition. I want to provide you with information today from three Hudson Cook attorneys, Nora Udell, UDELL, Eric Johnson. Eric Johnson is now the editor-in-chief of Spot Delivery, the monthly newsletter from Hudson Cook. And also a name that you hear a lot from us is attorney L. Jean Noonan. L. Jean Noonan, and if you have car law, the F&I Legal Desk book, L. Jean Noonan co-authored for the chapters in the current edition of car law. So let's stay with this slide, FTC commissioners, and just talk about a couple of things. But encourage you to get an article that was released just a couple of days ago, really, first part of December, from the National Automotive Finance Association, NAFA, under the heading of nonprimetimes.com, nonprimetimes.com, from the National Automotive Finance Association. And it's a piece that's written by Eric Johnson. And again, Eric Johnson is a partner in the Oklahoma City office of Hudson Cook. And the title of his article, very timely, what does a Biden/Harris administration mean for auto sales and finance? Very timely. What does a Biden-Harris administration mean for auto sales and finance? Would invite you to pull that up and get some history behind you as we think about the prophecy and what might yet happen after the results of the Senate runoff races next month in the great state of Georgia. So a lot of this kind of depends upon that. Let's talk about information about the Federal Trade Commission and the commissioners. And again, this information you'll find in the article written by attorney Eric Johnson. First of all, the structure of the Federal Trade Commission is really pretty simple. The structure of the FTC is headed by 5 commissioners. All 5 of the commissioners are nominated by the President of the United States. They all have to be confirmed by the Senate, and they all go in with a 7-year term. They can only be removed for cause. After the 5 commissioners are confirmed by the Senate, the president or current president chooses among the 5 a chairman or a chairperson among those commissioners to act as chairman. And finally, among the 5, no more than 3 can be from the same political party, which is kind of interesting. So again, it's headed by 5 commissioners. They're all nominated by the president. They have to be confirmed by the Senate. They have a term of 7 years going in. They can only be removed for cause. The president, among the 5 commissioners, chooses a chairman and no more than 3 from the same political party. So there you go with the FTC commissioners. Talk a bit about the CFPB and the director, and maybe just a little bit of history and structure of the CFPB. Now, going back in time, it was July 21, 2010. If you were in business at the time, that was the date that President Obama signed into law the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act of 2010, July 21, 2010. To the exact date a year later, July 21, 2011, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, was created as an independent federal agency. July 21, 2011, the director nominated by President Obama, approved by the Senate, was Richard Cordray, and Cordray was the former Attorney General from my home state, the great state of Ohio. We know now that the first going into 8 years of the CFPB, they've awarded restitution of well over 12 billion, that's B as in boy, $12 billion to over 35 million consumers. So the CFPB is alive and well. December 2020, our current director is still a Trump appointee. Her name is Kathy Kraninger, Kraninger. We assume that's going to change in the next few days with the election results. But Kathy Kraninger is the current director. So again, President Biden will be choosing a director, has to be confirmed by the Senate, and we'll see what happens with respect to that. Going back to the Trump era, prior to appointing Kathy Kraninger, who was approved by the Senate, his first director was really an interim director. You might remember the name Mick Mulvaney, also the budget director, but also served for a period of time as the interim director of the CFPB. And then last but certainly not least, congressional activity. You know, what can we say about that? Probably from our standpoint of compliance and ethics, the industry that we're in, a committee that you should flag that would get your attention very quickly because of how they feel about our industry, how they feel about finance reserve, how they feel about discrimination, how they feel about prices charged for our financial insurance products and services, our optional voluntary protection products. That committee is the House Financial Services Committee, currently chaired by Maxine Waters, the great state of California. And as you know, the past several years, they've done a number of things with respect to our industry, our business, based upon the subcommittees from the House Financial Services Committee. So those 3 entities, the FTC, CFPB, Congressional Activity, if you get the piece written by Eric Johnson, he'll be talking about a little bit of prophecy about what he thinks is going to happen, and as a result of the election, especially if the Senate seats in Georgia go Democratic as opposed to Republicans keeping the Senate. So he's going to make some predictions along those lines, and I guess we can say that prophecy that comes true is really history written in advance. So we'll kind of see what happens with respect to that. I will also tell you that in addition to the National Automotive Finance Association non-prime times article, what does the Biden-Harris administration mean for auto sales and finance? I was talking with a Hudson Cook attorney just recently, and I can tell you, and it's not yet out, it won't be out until later this month in December, but if you're a subscriber to Spot Delivery newsletter, this article, what does the Biden-Harris administration mean for auto sales and finance? That will be the featured article in the December 2020 issue of Spot Delivery. So just maybe learn from that and get a copy of that if you're not a direct subscriber. I want to chat with you a little bit about, though, before we get into the next slide. We talked about numbers and things that are happening in our industry as far as new car and light truck sales. You know, when we entered 2020, NADA, JD Power and Associates, Cox and others, they were forecasting a new car and light truck sales for 2020 of like 16.6 to 16.8 million new cars and light trucks. That's kind of interesting because for the previous 5 years, as you may know and remember, 2015 through 2019, we had 5 straight years where new car and light truck sales were above 17 million. In fact, the best year ever in the history of our business was 2016 at over 17.5 million new cars and light truck sales. In fact, as an industry, we've had 7 years, 7 times that we've been over 17 million new cars and light trucks. And what I think is kind of interesting, I remember being in the business in 2000 and 2001. 2000 at the time set the record of 17.4 million new cars and light trucks. And then even in 2001, with the events of 9/11, our industry came in at 17.1 million new cars and light trucks. So again, 7 times over 17 million. Now, as we know, COVID and the effects of that, this 16.6, 16.8, really at the beginning of the second quarter and even into the third quarter of this year, the numbers were scaled down to between 13.2, 13.5, maybe 13.7 or 8 new cars and light trucks is what the industry is saying for 2020. However, because of what the industry has done, inventory and just what we've done with sales and people requesting transportation, it appears that we have a real shot when the dust settles for December of this year to end 2020 with somewhere between maybe 14.5 million new cars and light trucks, well above what they initially dropped it down to the 13.2 to 13.5. And then for those of you that are looking ahead to next year, preliminary numbers, I've seen it as high as 16.2 million for 2021. I think Cox Automotive recently published their estimate was 15.2, and NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, for next year, 2021, 15.5 million new cars and light trucks. But either way, what a great time it is to commit yourselves or recommit ourselves to the retail automobile industry. Mike, next slide, if you would. All right, here we go from the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC Auto Buyer Study. The FTC Auto Buyer Study. This was announced and information was released about this study on July 30th of this year, July 30, 2020. And if you are a Spot delivery person and subscribe to Spot, the September issue of Spot delivery has all the information you need and would want from this auto buyer study conducted by the Federal Trade Commission. The highlights, some might say the lowlights of this study, are the following 4 bullet points. Number 1, and by the way, this is written, this article for Hudson Cook for Spot delivery is written or authored by Hudson Cook attorney Nora Udell, U-D-E-L-L. Excuse me, Nora Udell. 4 bullet points. It provides you with lessons from in-depth consumer interviews and related research, which was pretty heavy. Number 2, it highlights the challenges and confusion consumers face in buying and financing a vehicle. That's what the FTC says. Number 3, the focus is on enforcement attention in vehicle sales and financing transactions. And last but not least, the study used 38 detailed consumer interviews with Washington, D.C. metropolitan area consumers. Had discussions since this came out with a number of people, some of you probably with us today, that talked about how small this sampling, as detailed as it might be, and it was very detailed, but still only using 38 detailed consumer interviews with one market area, metro area, Washington, D.C., and many people criticizing this because it was really such a small sampling. I would say 2 things. I feel your pain with that, and to some extent, I think that you're probably right. But I really believe that quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, if they would have used, instead of 38, 380 or maybe 3,800, the study would have come out the same. The study would have come out the same with what these people are saying. But the general outline of the auto buyer study and the buckle up report begins with these conclusions as it relates to the study itself. Again, announced and released on July 30th, and September issue of Spot is where you will find that. Next slide, Mike. The Federal Trade Commission Buckle Up Report, again, released by the Federal Trade Commission, July 30th, 2020. And again, the highlights of this information from the same article from Nora Udell, the September issue of the Hudson Cook Spot Delivery newsletter. So what does this Buckle Up report do? It highlights 5 areas of enforcement activities. 5 areas of enforcement activities. I think the key or operative word there, ladies and gentlemen, would be enforcement. And you might write down 2021 with respect to that, because many people say with a Biden-Harris administration, the E word of enforcement is going to be front and center. So what are these 5 areas of enforcement activities listed by the Federal Trade Commission with respect to their Buckle Up report? Number 1 is add-on sales. We know what that means. Number 2 is advertising. Number 3, negotiating vehicle price and financing terms. Number 4, reviewing and signing documentation. And last but not least, spot delivery. And then the second bullet point here, and is what the FTC flagged big time. And here it is. They flagged add-ons. They flagged add-ons as the single greatest area of confusion that they observed. And what they did in this Buckle Up report, they are cautioning dealers to think very carefully about how add-ons are promoted. So they flagged add-ons as the single greatest area of confusion that they observed based upon the report and the study, and cautioned us as dealers to think very carefully about how these add-ons are being promoted. I would say to you, just looking ahead to this, words really do matter. And what we want to think about is eliminating the words add-ons from our vocabulary, ancillary products. And we've shared this with you before in previous webinars, and really use the words optional voluntary protection products. Optional voluntary protection products. And that's directly related to the recommendation from NADA in the NADA model dealership policy for voluntary protection products that was authored by Paul Mitri from NADA. Mike, next slide, please. Okay, the FTC identified 6 problem areas relating to add-on sales. So we know that the add-on sales was the single greatest area of confusion. And now what we see here are the 6 problem areas or bullet points that they relate to add-on sales. Let me read these real quickly. Then I'm going to come back and handle them one at a time. I'm going to give you some of the exact wording that the FTC uses in their Buckle Up report. But what are the big 6 that people related to as problem areas? Number 1, late, limited, or no discussion of VPPs. Number 2, confusion about whether VPPs are free. Number 3, impressions that VPPs are mandatory. Number 4, unexpected limitations of VPPs. Number 5, opaque pricing of VPPs. And last but not least, bundling VPPs as well. So if we take these one at a time, and permit me to actually read some of this from the report directly to you. Number 1 is late, limited, or no discussion of VPPs. Late, limited, or no discussion of VPPs. So this is what the FTC put together based upon customer response. Here we go. The limited amount of time and circumstances under which most study participants had to consider VPPs may have contributed to lack of understanding and consumer confusion. So, one more time. The limited amount of time and circumstances under which most study participants had to consider VPPs may have contributed to lack of understanding and consumer confusion. So my notes with respect to that, I mean, what are they implying? Are they implying that these people were packed as it relates to F&I products and services? Number two, confusion about whether VPPs are free. Confusion about whether VPPs are free. Here's what the FTC said in their report. Some consumers understood that VPPs were included in their deal at no additional charge and were surprised to learn when going through their paperwork during the interviews that they had paid extra for VPPs. Read that once again. Consumers understood that VPPs were included in their deal at no additional charge is what they thought. It's in the deal, but were surprised to learn when going through the paperwork during the interview that they had paid extra for the VPPs. So two words I'm thinking of there are packing once again, or transparency, lack thereof. Are things really clearly seen and easily understood? Evidently not by the people in this survey. Number three, impressions that VPPs are mandatory. For example, the FTC noted that if GAAP, for example, is required for financing, its cost must be included in the consumer's annual percentage rate and finance charge disclosures. Alternatively, if GAAP is not required for financing, dealers cannot represent that it is. So again, it is the meaning of the word optional, not required, conditioned financing, whatever. So transparency and optional, not being required. Number four, unexpected limitations of VPPs. Unexpected limitations of VPPs. One consumer, and I'm not making it up, it's what they're saying, one consumer bought a lifetime maintenance plan only to discover later that he received a one-year plan that covered only periodic oil changes. So one consumer, who knows how many more, whatever, but ladies and gentlemen, that's part of the report. That's what it says. The consumer bought a lifetime maintenance plan only to discover later that it received a one-year plan that covered only periodic oil changes. So there you back to the T word of transparency, things being clearly seen, easily understood. Number five, opaque pricing of VPPs. A few consumers said that dealers explained the cost of each VPP, but many other participants said that dealers quoted prices only in terms of how much each product would increase the monthly payment. Some consumers did not know how much purchased products cost at all. So think about that. Consumers said that dealers explained the cost of each VPP, but many others said that dealers quoted prices only in terms of how much the product would increase the payment. Consumers did not know how much purchased products cost at all. So, my thought there is if you follow the NADA model leadership policy for voluntary protection products, that certainly would solve this problem if done from a recommendation standpoint from NADA, as it would be at the first four as well. So that was number five, opaque pricing of VPPs. And last but not least, number six, bundling of VPPs. Some consumers indicated that dealers sold them VPPs as packages and that dealers did not give prices for each product. Consumers said that they felt like they could not select specific protection products they wanted, but was forced to buy all the products as a bundle. So again, transparency, packing, bundling, do I have the choice? So ladies and gentlemen, those are the 6 problem areas relating to add-on sales as it relates to add-on sales. A lot of transparency, a lot of packing, but tie that back into what we just discussed earlier, and that's the enforcement action that's yet to come, I would say to you in 2021, as it relates to the Biden-Harris administration. Michael, next slide, sir, if you would. All right, latest VPP regulatory attacks. Latest VPP regulatory attacks. Number one, the FTC imposes the death penalty on a dealership group. The FTC imposes death penalty on dealership group. Number two, and we'll come back to all of these, a duo as a dealer and finance manager in fraud scheme, face up to 30 years in prison and a fine up to $1 million or both. And then number three, the last three, are directly from a spot delivery newsletter article by Hudson Cook's L. Jean Noonan, and that's representations, or really probably misrepresentations, about whether or not our products are optional, representations about the cost, and representations about the value of the product. Let's go back to the top and talk about the FTC imposing the death penalty. The FTC imposing the death penalty on a dealership group. If you are a spot delivery newsletter subscriber, go to the October issue of Spot, and there you will see an article written by Tom Hudson himself. And the title of the article is "The Federal Trade Commission Imposes the Death Penalty on Dealership Group." Let me begin by reading a quote from the Federal Trade Commission's current director. This will probably change next year. The Federal Trade Commission's current director, Andrew Smith. He's the director of the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. And he said, and I quote, "These auto dealers," meaning the ones that the death penalty was imposed, had the death penalty imposed upon them, "these auto dealers sent bogus applications to finance companies to qualify consumers for car loans that they could not afford, subjecting the consumers to defaults and repossessions. Falsifying income and down payment information on car loan documents is illegal, and the FTC won't hesitate to take action against car dealers who engage in this harmful conduct," unquote. So again, going back to Tom Hudson's article, and the death penalty was really three things. Death penalty, part number one, the court-approved settlement resolving the FTC charges says that the dealership must cease business operations. The dealership must cease business operations. That's the death penalty. And Tom Hudson's quote or comment about that is this. Tom says, "The death penalty, part of the settlement, is one that the FTC seldom employs, usually preferring to put the business under a court-ordered mandate to stop doing bad stuff, bad things, and then suing the business for even more money if it does the bad stuff again. The death penalty thing ought to give pause to any dealership running a non-compliant operation." So again, the death penalty, the dealership must cease business operations. And what's Tom's last comment about that? That death penalty thing ought to give pause to any dealership running a non-compliant operation. So that's the first comment that he made with respect to the death penalty and in this particular organization. Number two, the settlement for this group includes a judgment of over $7 million, $7,203,227 to be exact, against the defendants, and makes also the Federal Trade Commission an unsecured claimant in the bankruptcy proceedings, which is kind of interesting. So a $7.2 million action settlement against the defendants, and the FTC is an unsecured claimant in the bankruptcy procedures. And then finally, number three, Tom notes that this case continues against the individuals. The case is not over, that the case continues against the individuals. Putting a business into bankruptcy might eliminate some of the company's problems, but it doesn't provide a shield for all individual liability. So once again, the death penalty thing, as Tom said, ought to give anyone pause to any dealership running a non-compliant operation. The second topic with respect to this, the duo in the fraud scheme to face up to 30 years in prison and a fine of $1 million or both. You know, we've been talking about this for some time in our classes and also in our in-store webinars around the country. And this has to do with, you might recall, with a dealer and finance manager in Erie, Pennsylvania. And we've talked about the fact that the FBI raided the home of the dealer, also the dealership as well. And so they now face up to 30 years in prison, a fine of up to $1 million or both. And what we've learned is that sentencing phase is to be done the first part of 2021. I believe February of 21 is the projected date for the sentencing of this duo from Erie, Pennsylvania. So mark your calendars with respect to that. And then last but not least, from Hudson Cook attorney L. Jean Noonan. This is from the October 2020 Spot Delivery newsletter. And here's a quote from Jean. She says, you know, when regulators attack a dealership, they generally use one or more of three claims. And here's the three claims. Number one, representations about whether the product is optional. Is it optional? Not required. Number two, representations or misrepresentations about the cost. And last but not least is representations about value. So once again, if you're a Hudson Cook newsletter subscriber, I would encourage you to pull that up, read that, and just because it's too lengthy for me to share it all with you, and jot down what she says that we really should be doing so that we don't fall into these traps. I will tell you, however, a couple things that we've talked about a lot for the last year and a half now, almost, is that you know, we need to be complying with the NADA Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program as it relates to setting rates with customers. We need to be complying with and endorsing the NADA Model Leadership Policy for Voluntary Protection Products. And then in her section where Jean Noonan, LG Noonan, talks about representations about value, she really talks about the fact that when we talk to customers and present our products, we better be showing customers the actual contract itself and not just presenting and selling and showing brochures, because brochures are incomplete and just don't have the entire amount of information. And by the way, that information and that representation, that recommendation is a better word, from NADA about utilizing the certificates and not brochures and laminates and that kind of thing. You'll find that in the NADA Model Leadership Policy for voluntary protection products. So those are the latest current VPP regulatory attacks. More to come, I'm sure. The death penalty on the dealership group, which is over, but really not yet totally over. The fraud scheme with the duo in Pennsylvania, going to be an interesting first quarter for them. And then the representations about about whether products are optional, about their cost, and representations about the value. And as Jean Noonan says, these three things, when dealerships are attacked by regulators, predatory litigators, whatever, they generally use one or more of these three things. Mike, next slide, sir. AFIP, the Association of Finance and Insurance Professionals. Unable to have Dave Robertson with us today, but AFIP has been approved to include a desk-sized version of the program's dealership voluntary protection product policy notice in AFIP's basic certification course material. This sign can be displayed on a desk or wall. This was approved again by NADA directly from Paul Mitri. In response to requests by dealer support products and service providers, these signs can be purchased directly from AFIP, replacement in F&I offices. And then how can you get information? Go to member pricing and leave contact information at afip.com. And what the voluntary protection products policy says is that this dealership offers vehicle service contracts and other voluntary products that are designed to protect your investment in a vehicle you purchase or lease from us. The purchase of any of these voluntary protection products is completely optional and is not required to purchase or lease a vehicle or obtain warranty coverage, financing on particular terms, or any other product or service offered by the dealership. Our dealership is fully committed to providing you the price, terms, and conditions of each voluntary protection product before you decide to purchase it. So if you want to make that choice and get that from AFIP, that's how you can do that. Michael, also next slide. Number of people that join us are regularly involved in AFIP certification. Always ask, and Dave gets follow-up information and requests for what's the dates of the boot camps that will set you up for training. So beginning for 2021, AFIP is conducting the virtual boot camps. The first one is next month, January 19th to the 22nd, an AFIP virtual boot camp. The next one in February looks like, from a date standpoint, it's back to back, 2 in a row, February 16th through the 22nd. Then March 9th to 12th. And then in April, it's April 13th to 16th. So if you want to get involved with a boot camp, as the next line said, if you want to host a boot camp for your dealer group in person or online, here's how you can do it. Contact AFIP directly for additional details. But encourage you to contact Shannon Robertson at afip.com, or Tevis Grisso at afip.com, and their direct number, 817-428-2434, to talk about AFIP certification and also preparing for that with the very popular and very well attended AFIP boot camps as well. Mike, next slide. As we do in so many of our workshops, to kind of wrap this up, we always talk about, Dave Robertson talks about it, our special guest talks about it, whatever, is to make a commitment in your organization to develop and commit yourself to mission and value statements. And the mission statement that we talk about very simply is this: every customer knows what they're getting, they agree to buy it, they know why they need it, and they feel good about it when they leave the dealership. Think about that if people are really thinking that way when they leave your store, and what probably is not going to happen with respect to people coming back and saying, well, hey, you didn't tell me this, you didn't tell me that, whatever. And maybe just by showing the customer and selling off the product agreement, as opposed to a brochure which is incomplete, or a laminate which is totally incomplete, that might make your mission statement really go over the top with respect to the consumer. Every customer knows what they're getting, they agree to buy it, they know why they need it, and they feel good about it when they leave our dealership. And then the value statement, this is the value statement from the American Guardian group of companies, specifically American Guardian Warranty Services University. But basically, what is that? We endorse and teach the industry standard and best practices. The industry standard and best practices that are recommended by NADA, AFIP, and our Seller Code of Conduct for retail sales. NADA, what we're endorsing are the 2 NADA programs, the Fair Credit Compliance Policy and Program, and also the NADA Model Leadership Policy for presenting voluntary protection products. AFIP, what we're endorsing is certainly AFIP certification. What we're endorsing are the AFIP 9 canons that are part of AFIP certification, and also commitment to not fall into the trap of being or utilizing any of what AFIP refers to as the 7 deadly sins of F&I, which again are the 7 most common errors that cause dealers to become the targets of bad things. Those bad things are media exposés, class action lawsuits, and high dollar regulatory fines. So once again, if Dave was with us today, he would share with you, hey, it doesn't take all 7 of those things to take you down to these things. It only takes 1. If any of these things becomes a pattern or practice in your store negatively, you're guaranteeing yourself a class action lawsuit. So in this industry standard and best practices that are recommended by NADA, by AFIP, and our internal American Guardian group of companies, Seller Code of Conduct for retail sales, which will serve as a guide. It serves as a guide to the proper sales practices for all retail sellers of AGWS products and services. Again, our goal is to help you maximize deal profit, both front-end gross and finance and insurance income, but always doing it the right way in a manner consistent with good customer relations and sound business practices. Next slide. Once again, back to our webinar page, on demand, 24/7, 365, providing you with compliance and ethics and finance and insurance training, sales training at your fingertips. agwsu.com/webinars. Pull them up, play them. Any questions, comments, you want the slides, want help in doing a webinar together or just doing training yourself, let me know and we can get those slides sent directly to you. That's our commitment. So once again, we'll continue that into 2021, and also for 2021 have some surprises as it relates to guest appearances or speakers with our webinar series for 2021. Michael?
All right.
Next slide.
Bob. Great
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was it.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say great job, great information as always. You could see here is the webinar schedule coming up for 2021. I think there's a LinkedIn. Yep, make sure to go follow and like us on LinkedIn. And then that'd be it. Great job, Bob.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great wrap up to 2020, and let's forge ahead, jump into 2021. Thank you all.